Hey guys, welcome back. So last week you should have designed out the HTML for this layout template that we downloaded. So what we're going to be doing is this week is taking, let me preview this page real quick. Alright, we're going to be taking this HTML code, which this is how it looks at its current state, which is not great at all, and we're going to make it look exactly like this. So at 100%, this is how it should look. So let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is, well, I sort of, every time I get a Photoshop design or when I create one, I sort of break it down mentally into the different divs it's going to be, and so that's sort of what we've done already with the HTML here. And I've given everything these ID names and classes and stuff like that. So all that is in place. So at that point, I'm going to select each element and style them all individually. So the first thing we do is the body tag, since that wraps around everything, the whole page. So I'm going to look at this page and I'm going to see what elements are consistent throughout the page. Well, one is this background color it's just a little off-white, so it's a very light gray. The other thing I noticed is the majority of the text is kind of this medium gray color. The other thing I'm noticing is we've got links that are this color, sort of this reddish color, and all the font throughout the page is Arial. So if we click here, we can see it's Arial. If I click here, we can see it's Arial. If I click here, we see it's Arial. So those are the main elements that are pretty consistent throughout the page. So that's what I'm going to set up first. So I'm going to go back into Dreamweaver. I'm going to click on the body. Now we should have created an external style sheet last week, which is right here. And if you haven't, go ahead and do that. So we need to create link href equals assets/css/style.css, and then rel equals style sheet, type is text/css, and then that's a self-closing tag. And if we go down here in Dreamweaver, we've got our files kind of listed out. We should have that style sheet in our CSS folder. Now, Dreamweaver CS4 automatically puts all your linked files along here. So we've actually got this here. If you're not using CS4, what you'll have to do is just double click on this and that will open it in a new tab. So right now we've got no styling whatsoever. So I'm going to show you a couple ways to do this. One is the Dreamweaver way, and the other is just the straight code way. Since we'll be reviewing the code, I'm going to go ahead and do everything using Dreamweaver's tools for those of you using Dreamweaver. So what you do is you click on the tag that you want to style, and you'll notice it shows up here in the hierarchy. And then I'm going to go over here and click New CSS Rule. And I'm going to, under this first drop down, I'm going to select compound based on your selection, and you'll notice it drops body in there since I had it clicked. And it says here, this selector name will apply to your rule to any body element. And down here at the bottom, you should make sure that it says style.css. It shouldn't be inside this document only, and it shouldn't tell it to create a new one. If we do this document only, it's going to create a style tag inside of our HTML, which we don't want. So I'm going to hit OK. Alright, so we've got this little dialog, and this is actually pretty cool. It doesn't require any coding to set up all this stuff, which can be good for non-coders, but it's also a lot faster, and it's kind of, you know, a lot of times I can't remember the exact names of certain elements, so this is really helpful. So first we're going to go to the type menu. We're going to go to font family, select Arial, comma Helvetica, comma sans serif. So this list order is just based on what fonts are available on the person's computer. So Arial is a web standard font, so most people should have that. But if for whatever reason the person's computer doesn't have this font, it's going to choose Helvetica. And if that person's computer doesn't have Helvetica, then it's going to choose sans serif. So sans serif just means any typeface without serifs. And if you don't know what those are, they're kind of these little I'll switch this to a serif font to show you. It's thinking. Alright, these things right here are serifs. These little ledges. So anyway, actually that looks pretty good, that font. But yeah, we're going to do that. Font size is not important yet. And then we got to choose the color. So how do we find out what the color is? Well, I'm just going to go into Dreamweaver, highlight the text, and then this color pops up here. I'm going to click it, and it says it's AF, AF, AF. That is the hexadecimal color code. So I'm going to escape, switch back over here, and right in here I'm going to type $AF, AF, AF. And alright, so that's it for now. And then the other thing we want to change is the background color. So that's under the background category, and then background color. So let's go find out what that color was. So I'm back in Photoshop. I'm just going to press I to get my eyedropper, click here, and then I'm going to click this color, and it is F8, F8, F8. So I'm going to go type $F8, F8, F8. Hit apply, and let's check out our page. So far it's looking a lot better, looking a lot closer. So alright, so the next thing that kind of popped out to me was the links. So let's go ahead and make our links look like their links. So but before I do, let me just show you guys the CSS code. So if I go over here, you'll notice Dreamweaver generated this code for me based on that little tool I used. So it typed font-family : capital Arial, comma Helvetica, comma sans serif, semicolon. New line, color, semicolon, or sorry, colon, $AF, semicolon, and then background dash color. So if you're not using Dreamweaver, your code should look just like this. So you can hit pause and just check this and make sure it looks right. Okay, so you'll notice there's this star here. That means it's unsaved. So let's go ahead and hit Command S to save it. And then let's go preview this in Firefox. So there's this little globe here. I'm going to click that. And it looks a lot better. It's getting closer. So let's move on to those links now. So I'm going to click on the link, any link element. I'm going to click New CSS Rule, a little icon, and you'll notice it gives me the hierarchy. So this link is inside of a list item, and then it's inside of a div called top nav, or unordered list called top nav, and then inside of a div with an ID of wrapper. And it kind of spits all that out for me and tells me what all is going to be affected. Well, really, I want it to apply to all links, not just ones that are inside of wrapper, top nav, and LI. I want every link. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all those. And now it says this selector name will apply your rule to all A elements. So I'm going to hit OK. So we want to get rid of this underline and change the color. So let's go into Photoshop, select our text, and I press T to get to the text tool. It's also right here. And we've got my color. Highlight that, B86443. Command C to copy. And just going to type $, paste, hit apply, changes it. Now I just need to get rid of those underlines. And that's under this text decoration list. We've got underline, overline, line through, and blink. I want none. I'm going to hit apply, got rid of it. So, escape. So yeah, that's it. So let's just hit OK. Let's go over to the CSS. It generated this code for me. So we've got the A, and then inside the curly brackets, the color is the one we set. Text-decoration is none. So for you non-Dreamweaver people, just pause it and make sure you type that code out. So let's go ahead and save our CSS. So Command S and go into Firefox. Let's refresh the page, and it fixed up our links. Alright, so next let's set the wrapper. So you notice inside of this page, it all every element ends at this certain width. So let's go ahead and style that wrapper. So what I'm going to do to figure out the width of it is I'm going to use my marquee tool. Whoops. Final Cut kind of jumped in the way. Okay. I'm going to choose the marquee, and then I'm going to make sure you're precise to the pixel. And I'm going to go to here. And now, let's see, I'm going to make sure that my workspace is set up to essential. What we want is the info window if you don't have it already. And this is going to tell us the width and the height of our selection. So let's just round that to 940. So I'm going to go into Dreamweaver, and let's see. I'm going to actually click. I'm just going to click anywhere, and then it's going to show me the hierarchy down here. So if I click this, it's going to say IMG, which is inside of a div with an ID of logo, which is inside of a div with an ID of wrapper. And that's the one I want. So I'm going to click on it, and it puts a blue box around what I've selected, and it also highlights my code. So it's showing everything that's inside of the wrapper. So let's go here, create a new style for it. It puts it in here, hit OK. So I want to set the width to 940. So 940, and it has pixels already selected. Hit apply. So wrapper width 940. I'm going to save it. And in Firefox, let's refresh. Now it sets it to 940, which I can measure it. It's just about 940. But it's not centered. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to set the text align to center, because you'll notice here this is left aligned, this is left aligned, this is left aligned, this is left aligned. So we don't want to actually center everything, we just want the box itself to be centered. So the way that we do that is I'm actually just going to code this. Type margin, and we're going to use the treble method. So at the top we want to have this amount of space, and at the bottom we want to have this amount of space, and then we want the left and right to be centered. So first of all, I'm going to measure this space right here. So that's 40. So that's the top margin. So 40 pixels. So for top, then we're going clockwise, and the right is going to be set to auto. And then I'm going to measure the bottom, and we'll just round that to about 80. So 80 pixels, and then we're continuing clockwise to the left margin, and that's going to be auto. So I'm going to hit save, go into Firefox and refresh, and now it is set up the same as here. So if I set this to 100% and scroll up, okay. And for those of you who can hear, that's my roommate Kyle playing guitar. Alright, so now what we want to do is add this little sliver at the top. So I'm going to go and check how tall it is. And I'm going to trim that last one off. And it is 3 pixels tall. And this dark part is going to be the same as the rest of our layout. It's going to be 940. Whereas the lighter gray extends to the very edge. So I'm going to find out what color that is by clicking on it with the eyedropper, and that's DF, DF, DF. If I click here, you'll see it's DF, DF, DF. And that's also 3 pixels tall. So this right here is top sliver. I'm going to click add new, top sliver. The color, now we don't want to set the color, we want to set the background color. So the background color is number DF, DF, DF. Hit apply. You notice it makes it gray. And we want to set the height, which is under box. Width doesn't matter. If we don't set it, it's going to be 100%. So 3 pixels, apply. So that makes it skinny. Alright, and the code for that, number sign top dash sliver, curly brackets, background dash color, DF, 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 height 3 pixels. Alright, so now we're going to select that sliver that's inside of top sliver. So that's dark sliver. I'm going to click on that in the code. Create new. I'm going to delete top sliver. That's not really necessary since there's only one dark sliver. I'm going to set the background color. So let's find out what that is. I drop it 333, just 333333, and we can actually accomplish that with 3 3s. So whenever you have a repeating value in each RGB section, you can minimize it to 1 each. So that's just going to give us 3 3s. So background color number 333. Hit apply. And you notice right now it fills the whole thing. That's because we need to set the height and width. So the width is 940. Hit apply. And actually, let's hit OK. And let's save our CSS. Go to Firefox and refresh. And we've got it here, but it doesn't look like there's any height. So let's give that a height as well. So height is 3px. Save it. And there it is, except now it's left aligned. It's not centered. So let's set the margin. Let's just set it to auto. And that's going to apply auto to all 4 values, to the top, right, bottom, and left. Let's hit save, refresh, and it's centered up, and it's aligned with our wrapper box. Now you'll notice there's this gap right here at the top, and that is set by the body's margin. So let's go up to the body. I'm just going to code this out. Click here, hit return, margin. Let's just set that to 0. Hit save, and it got rid of our gap. So we've got this top sliver. Looks just like it does on here. So great. Now let's just move down. Let's style this logo out here. So we just want to basically make sure that's centered. So let's go into Dreamweaver, click on the image. I'm going to move up to the div with an ID of logo that's wrapped around it. I'm going to click New. Now there's a couple ways we can do this. We can set text align to center. So let's try that method first actually. So that's going to be under block category, text align center. Hit apply, and that seemed to do the trick. So let's just go with that. So text dash align center. There it goes. Now let's move down to our top nav. So you notice these are all caps and they're gray, and they also have a gray border on the top and the bottom. So let's go ahead and set that. So I'm going to click UL top nav, create a new style. Let's delete wrapper. Hit OK. So I'm going to select border, and I'm going to uncheck same for all. Well, yeah, I'm going to uncheck that. Top, I want solid because I want a solid line. Bottom, I want solid. Right and left, I want none. I want them to be 1 pixel universally, and I want the color to be the same as our text. So that was AF. So number AF. Hit apply. Alright, let's save our CSS. Now you notice it gave us a border dash top, border dash right, border dash bottom, and border dash left. You can, just like with the margin, you can set 1 and use the treble method. But since we've got inconsistent borders, so since we don't have them on the left and right, we're just going to keep it laid out like this. So the way it types it is, you've got your border dash and then the side colon how wide it is or how thick it is, so 1 pixel, whether you want it to be solid, dash, dotted, or none, and then number sign the color. And these can actually be in any order as long as you have all 3. So I saved it. Let's go into here, refresh, and we've got our lines. Now I just need to add some spacing. So I'm going to go in here. Oh, one other thing I didn't set was making it all caps. So actually, let me set that first. I'm just going to type this out. So it's actually text transform, and we're going to choose uppercase. Now it's all uppercase, so we don't actually have to hold down shift when we type these or do caps lock. Also, let's get rid of these bullets here, and that's going to be list dash style, and we're going to choose none, and that gets rid of our bullets. And yeah, so now we're going to figure out the spacing here. So I'm using the marquee, measuring this, getting the info, and it's 18. So I'm just going to round it to 20. So that's going to be actually the padding, because that's the space within the border towards the contents, not outside of the div. So padding 20 px on the top, 0 for the right, 20 px for the bottom, and 0 for the left. Save, and we've got some spacing here. That's good. Okay, next I need to, well, let's just go and test it in Firefox. Alright, so that's good. Now, let's see here. We're going to want to stack these horizontally. So what we need to do is click on the link. And actually, let's, So we've got this hierarchy here. We've got top nav, and then we've got list items. So we'll click on that. Create new. And we don't need wrapper, but we do need top-nav before the list item, because we're going to have list items that are wrapped inside of other divs. So we want to specify links or list items that are inside of this div only. So we need to have this space li. Hit OK. So I'm going to go into box, float, left. Hit apply. And you notice they all stack to the left now. And that's just basically floating. What a float does is it makes everything kind of stick to one side or the other, and everything's going to kind of wrap around it. So we've got it floated to the left, but now we need some space, and we also need it to be centered. So let's go ahead and add the spaces first. So what I'm going to do is measure the space between each element. And that is, we'll just round it to 40. So I'm going to actually set that, I'm going to split it between margin left and margin right. So the margin right will be 20 pixels and left is 20 pixels. And that's going to give us an even 40 between each one. The reason I don't set 40 all to the right or all to the left is because that's going to kind of off-center everything. I want everything to be have even spacing on both sides. Okay, and then actually let's set some okay, so now even though we set the bottom padding on this, you'll notice they're not, like the padding sort of went away, and that has to do with the float. So what we need to do is create a clear for that, and I'll show you real quick how to do that. But I'm going to save my CSS. Alright, so I'm going to go inside of here, click. After my last list item, I'm going to create a div with an ID of clear. And as cool as floats are, this is one thing I don't like about them, is I don't know, you have to kind of clear them after you set them. And so we're going to click on our div with an ID of clear, click the new document, and this is just something I'm going to apply throughout the page at various times whenever I need to clear a float. So I'm not going to have any elements before the ID. So let's hit OK. We're going to go to box and then clear both. Hit apply. And you notice I get my space back. So it's gotten rid of our float. So the code for that is we've got a div with an ID of clear, or anything with an ID of clear, curly brackets clear, colon, both, semicolon. So let's save that. Let's go and preview it. And you know what? It actually didn't pick it up in here. Alright, I went and checked, and I guess it's a little strange, but you actually have to set a margin bottom for these list items in order to fix that. So when I went in here, once I set that margin bottom, it fixed that issue. But I just gave it a value of, let's see, I gave it a value of 0. So let me show you real quick with Firebug. I'm going to inspect this. Alright, so if let's see, we've got that selected. Okay, if we get rid of the padding, that's what it does. Now actually let's go to the list items. Let's actually give it a margin bottom of 20 pixels, and then let's give it a margin top of 20 pixels. And that actually seems to do the trick better. And that, again, that has mostly to do with this float. So just while I'm on the topic of Firebug, I had some people kind of mention that they seemed a little bit confused about the purpose of Firebug. Now, what I did right here was I just basically tested out the code to see how it appears on here. I'm not actually changing the code of the site. So I had some people save the pages and email it to me. That's not actually going to do anything. You had to do an actual screen grab, because if I save this, it's not going to work. And so, but basically this right here is what I'm doing by editing the CSS in Firebug is I'm saving myself from having to go here, type, hit save, go here, refresh, go back, type, save, go here, refresh. You know, it just saves you a whole lot of time. So this is just sort of a quick temporary code editor that lets you debug, and hence the name Firebug. So yeah, so let's go into our code and let's adjust it to kind of match those changes. So I'm actually going to, I like having all my margins on one line, so I'm going to delete those just because it's a little cleaner. So make sure you don't have any margins in the list item. Create a new line, margin, and then we're going to do the treble method again. So the top margin was 20 pixels. Was it? Yeah, it was 20 pixels. In fact, it's 20 all around, so all we have to type is just 20, and that's going to apply it to the top, right, bottom, and left. And now we need to go and get rid of the padding for the top nav. So let's go and do that. Hit save, and when we refresh the page, everything looks good. Okay, so we need to backtrack just a little bit, because there's a slight issue that it's not ideal for the web. It takes a little workaround. What you notice is we've got everything stacked to the left, and we really need to center it. But the issue we have here is if we try to wrap this in a center tag, it's not going to work. And also, we can't really set the padding to auto for the left and right like we can for the margin to make these stand in the middle. So what we're actually going to have to do is set a specific padding value to the left and right. Otherwise, what we're going to have to do is wrap it in a div that's the exact width of this element, and then give it a margin left and right of auto. But since we might be adding elements later to this list, it's going to throw it off. So it's a little tricky, and that might not make 100% sense, but that's just kind of what we have to do, and that's just sort of part of the limitation of HTML and CSS. And maybe there is a way out there, but I haven't really discovered it yet. So if any of you do find a link on it, then that'd be awesome to share with the class. So I'm going to show you how to do that. What I need to do is go into the Photoshop and find out how much space there is from here to here, because that's going to be the same from here to here. And we have to keep in mind that there's also 20 pixels that we need to subtract that's been added as the margin. So that right there is 200, we'll just round it to 240, minus 20 is 220. So we need to add a left padding of 220 to this unordered list. So I'm going to select UL top nav, and I'm going to go into the CSS, and I'm going to use the treble method. So padding 0 top, 0 right, 0 bottom, 220 pixels left. Let's save that and let's test it. And voila, it's nice and center. The other thing is, I forgot to mention, is unordered lists generally have an automatic 20 pixel margin that's set by default. And we actually need to set the spacing here, and it's not going to be an exact 20 pixels. It's going to be more like 40 pixels. So we need to actually set the margin top manually for the top nav. And I'm just going to test it out in Firebug. So margin 40 pixels for the top, and let's find out what the bottom margin is. That's also about 40. So I'm going to do 40 for the top, 0 for the left and right. And that seems to look correct. That looks like... Let me line it up. Yeah, it looks almost identical. Now the last thing we need to do to this unordered list is change the color. So this is, I sort of set this as a universal color for all the links in the page, but this is going to be a specific case where it's not red. So let me just test this in Firebug real quick. Well, actually, I actually need to create a new element for links inside of this div, because if I try to set the color in here to that AF, I need to set the number sign. It's not going to affect these because they're links, and links are a little more stubborn. So what I need to do is create a new item. So it's going to be top-nav A. So all A tags inside of divs with an ID of top-nav. And this one I'm typing out manually just because I feel like it. So the color for that, let's set it to AF. Alright, and they are now gray. So I'm going to hit save. Save on here. Let's go and refresh it. And sure enough, it worked. Now this looks like it's slightly larger than this type. So let me actually, and I think, let me see if this is the same as the rest of the text. So that's 14 point. That's 17 point. So let's actually set a font size for this. So we can either do this in top-nav LI or top-nav A. Since the text is inside of both of those, it's inside of both an anchor tag and a list item, and inside of top-nav, we can really set it to either of these, or we can even set it here. So let's actually set it here. And that's going to be font-size, and points are not the same as pixels. So, but I'm actually going to try point. Since, or no, this was 14, wasn't it? Yeah, 14 point. Let's set that at 14 point. Let's hit save. Refresh. It actually made it a little bigger, so that point size is not really consistent with Photoshop point size. So that's why I prefer to use pixels. So let's actually see if that does pixels. Yeah, Photoshop won't actually let you enter pixels as a value. The reason I like using pixels instead of points or ems or anything else is because it's consistent through all programs. So let's see how 14 pixels looks. And that actually looks a little closer. That looks like it's about the same size. Although our spacing is looking a little different. And that's because we entered 20 instead of 16. So let's just do that. That's where rounding actually can make a difference. So, and that's going to be under top nav list list item. Let's make that 16 pixels. Save it. And that looks closer to our layout. But actually, ooh. Okay, I see what happened. So our left and right was 20 pixels, but the top and bottom was 16 pixels. So that looks a lot better. Okay, and actually, let's do something real quick. Let's make it so when we highlight this link, it actually changes color. So this is kind of, since they didn't really specify in the Photoshop file, this is sort of our decision. I'm thinking that my top two choices would either to be make it this dark gray or to make it a red. So let me show you how to do that. After the top nav A, we're going to take a new one. It's going to be top dash nav A colon hover. And then we're going to do the curly brackets. So this is a specific state of the anchor tag. And we can even make it underline or do anything else. So we're setting a style specifically for when the mouse is over that element. So let's set the color to, let's set that, yeah, that was the color, 333. And let's go test that. And check it out. It turns dark gray when we put it over. So pretty cool, huh? We can also make it underline. So text dash decoration underline. Whoops. So yeah, puts an underline under it. So this is all your decision. I actually think it looks better without the underline. So yeah. And it's getting close. It's looking more like Photoshop document. Alright, so we've got this H1 tag right here. Let's check the style here. They actually look like they haven't bolded it, so it's actually regular. It's not bold. And H1s and any H tag is bold by default. So we'll need to set the font weight to regular. The other thing is it's kind of got some padding on the edge. So I'm going to set this. That's about 50. And also it looks like it's bigger font size too. So let's see. Click on it. We know that's an H1. We're going to create a new style. I'm just going to delete that. So just H1. We're going to set the font weight to normal. You know, notice that skinnies it up a bit. And make it a little bigger. So font size, I'm just going to guess 24. Let's see how that looks. That's actually a lot smaller. So maybe 36. And that's a little bigger. Maybe 40. Maybe 46. That looks about right. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is add those edges. So box padding, I'm going to set the right and left. And I already forgot what the value was. Excuse me. So between about 50 or 60. So say 55. And well, actually let's try this first. That seems to do the trick. I'm going to save the CSS. And by the way, that code is font weight, it's font dash weight colon normal, font dash size 46. And let me see, this is the thing, when you let Dreamweaver auto generate your style, it does it like this. It doesn't use the trouble method. I'm actually going to delete that and replace it. So the top is 0 and the left and right are 55 pixels. So this is actually the top and bottom are 0, left and right are 0. Let's check that out. And that's Looks like it's a little too big. So let's do that in Firebug. Inspect element. I'm just going to click on here, and you can actually use your down arrow on the keyboard and scale it until it looks right. And that fits nicely on 2 lines. So we're going to go with 40 for the font size. Now you'll notice they also have this red here. Now instead of making a span and giving it a class of like red or whatever, I'm just going to make it so when you wrap any element in bold, it's going to make it red. So let me show you how to do that. So which words they have? Online portfolio, city name, state. So I'm going to highlight online portfolio, and down here Dreamweaver gives us this little bold button, or we can hit Command B. That's the same as wrapping it into B tags or strong tags. So I'm going to hit that, and you notice it makes it bold. We can actually style it so it doesn't make it bold. Even though it's wrapped in a bold tag, we can make it so bold tags aren't bold, which is kind of interesting. And city name state, so we're going to wrap that in bold. And I'll just show you the HTML. So city name state is wrapped in strong, and so is online portfolio. So now let's click in here, create a new CSS element, and it's going to be anything that is wrapped in a strong and also wrapped in the H1 is going to get this applied to it. And we're going to make the color that red color, wherever it was. Okay, so I'm going to click here. That's actually not the right color, so I'm going to have to go back to Photoshop and figure out what that color was. So yeah, B86443. So if we scroll up, look, it's now that color. And now I'm going to get rid of the boldness, so just make it normal, and check it out. Now the reason I tell to do that, to use bold or a strong tag instead of creating a new class or a new ID, is a lot of times when you give the site to a client, there's what's called a Wysiwyg Editor, and that stands for what you see is what you get. And that's pretty much what Dreamweaver is. It's kind of a text editor that lets you do stuff like you would in Microsoft Word. So it allows clients to make paragraphs, list items, bold, underline, and all that without touching any code. And one of those things that's always included is the bold. So I think it would be easier for the client to be able to edit by bolding something instead of giving them access to creating new divs and all that. So, hope that makes sense. So I'm going to save it, refresh, and it looks like it actually made it a little bigger. Oh, that's right, because I changed the font size in Firebug, but I didn't change it in the CSS. So I'm going to go back here, and we're going to go to H1. Or yeah, H1, set that to 40 instead of 46. Save that, refresh, and check it out. Our top section, whoops, looks pretty much identical. So, pretty awesome, huh? Okay. Hopefully at this point you're kind of getting the idea. This is becoming really repetitive, so I'm going to try to move through this a little faster since we're at 50 minutes. So I'm going to try to wrap this up in 10 minutes and possibly 15. So I'm just going to sort of blaze through this a little quicker, and if you need to pause it, then just go ahead and pause. Okay, so we've got our list items here. So fortunately, since these are all duplicated, we can kind of apply one style and it's going to apply to all three. So we're really just styling one. So let's make this image float to the left. So I'm going to click on it, new style. Now it's in all kinds of wrappers. So I'm actually just going to delete all that. So it's info-icon, box, float to the left, apply, and you notice all the text wraps around it to the right. But we also need to set some spacing. So let's check out how big that is. It's about 20. Well, we'll just do 16. So I like to have even numbers for my... Oh, sorry, I set that to the width. We want to set that to the margin or the padding. It really doesn't matter. So I'll just go ahead and do... I'm feeling margin. So 16 pixels, hit apply. There you have it. And that's pretty much it for the image, although there is a little bit of space at the top. So that, I'm going to say, we'll say that's about 16 as well. So 16 to the top, 16 to the right. Okay. Although, yeah, that's right. Alright, so I'm going to hit OK. That's pretty much it. So now we've got, this is an H2. Let's style our H2s inside of here. So let's find out what color that is. 808080. Create a new one, H2. We're going to go info H2. Set the color to 808080. It looks like it's not bold, so font weight normal, and I'm going to get rid of all margins because header tags usually have margins set to them. I'm going to set 0 and 0 padding. So the padding we're getting must be from this paragraph. So I'm actually going to create a style for paragraphs, all paragraphs, and get rid of all padding and margins. And there we go. Okay, although there's a little bit of spacing here, so I'm going to say that's probably 16. And also the font size should probably be a little smaller. So I'm going to click back on the H2, edit that. Let's set the margin bottom to 16. Maybe a little less. Let's try 14. Okay. And let's set the line height. You notice my text is a little more crunched. So I'm going to click here. But that's actually not going to be consistent throughout the page, so I'm not going to apply it to all paragraphs. I'm just going to apply it to the paragraph in here. So I'm going to create a new style, info paragraph, and that will be under block, or maybe it's type, line height. Let's set that to maybe 18. Let's see how that looks. Alright, maybe 22. There we go. That looks a little more like it. Maybe 24. 22. Okay. Alright, so you'll notice, well, that seemed to, it was stacking earlier, but after each one of these, each item, we need to set a clear. We also need to set a border and some padding. So I'm trying to think here. See, we don't have spacing up here, but we've got spacing up here. So let's go ahead and set that as a bottom padding. So I'm going to click inside of here. I'm going to choose the whole div. So create a new one. It's going to be $info. Alright, so we're going to set the bottom padding to, let's say 16. Alright, and then the margin bottom to 16. And then we're going to set a border only on the bottom. So I'm going to choose none, 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 and then the bottom is going to be solid, 1 pixel, and that's going to be what was the number? I think A7. Maybe it was A8. Okay. So let's save, test it out. Alright, so I'm not getting the border, and we're also getting this loopy, this wrappy thing. Okay. Oh, yeah, well, alright, I paused the video for a second to find out why these borders weren't showing up in Firefox, and the reason for it was I did not place these number signs here. So let me show you. So they still show up in Dreamweaver, but if we save the CSS and look at it in Firefox, it disappears. So that's why we've got to add those in there. And they show up. Okay. Now, there is this kind of wrapping issue here. Well, I guess, well, let's see how it is in the Photoshop document. Okay, so what we're going to have to do is create an extra margin space on the bottom here. So, and let's test that out in Dreamweaver. So I'm going to inspect, or in Firefox, I'm going to right click, inspect that element, and I'm going to add margin bottom and see if we can fix that issue. So 10 pixels, and yeah, it looks like it did. I'm just going to see what the minimum number is. So we need at least 10. So I'm going to go ahead and make it until we actually see it get pushed down. And actually it's not going to. So we can actually set it whatever we want. In fact, let me add some more text. I'm just going to double the text and see what happens. Okay, so when we double the text, it's still not wrapping. So let me inspect this again. So for the margin bottom, okay. Yeah, so we can actually have a maximum. Oh, I see. If we bump it up too high, it starts adding to this line. So what we need to do is add a clear after each of these. Or actually, let me think here. Yeah, because the float from this is actually carrying over to these. So let's go into our source code. Alright, so after each paragraph, let's do a clear div. So div ID equals clear. After this one, and actually let's just copy and paste that. Copy. After here, paste. And after here, paste. Let's see if that fixes it. Oh, but I gotta go in and fix that wrap. So, for the info icon, let's actually merge these. So margin, let's see, the top was 16, the right was 16, and the bottom was 16. So and then 0. Okay, everything's looking good. Now the only thing is this very last one in here doesn't have a line. So this is where classes come in. Since each of these each of these divs already has an ID, I can't really add a second one. I can, but it's better just to add a class. So class equals, I'm just going to call it last, and I'm going to make a style for that. I'm going to do info dot last border none. Let's see how that goes. Actually, I think it might just be let me try this. Alright, did a little messing around and fixed the issue. So we actually do need to give it two different IDs. So the way you do that is in the ID spot, you go info space last. And when I was trying to do it with a class, for some reason it wasn't actually carrying over my style requests. So after we've got info, we've got $sign last, border is none. And when we do that, that will show the last one with no border. So this one has actually two IDs assigned to it. But at the same time though, if we have that, we lose this style here. So the way around that is actually there's a CSS state called last child. So :last dash child. So just like we have with the anchor, we've got :hover. We've got last child. We can also do first child, or we can do a specified number, or we can do even or odd, or whichever. But when we do info :last child, border none, that solves our problem. Okay, so it's looking really good so far. I mean, compared to what we had before. So let's go ahead and just pause right there, because it's been over an hour. So I won't have you turn in anything this week, but another week from now we're going to have this thing. I'm going to have you turn in this completely styled out. So just try to get up to this point if you can, and we can finish the rest of this in next week's lesson, and we'll do the footer as well. And the homework is listed in the notes. Alright, thanks.